Welcome to Salem Night Stories, where I tell horror stories daily. Please like and subscribe so I can continue to bring you stories like these. Now let's get into today's story, the Blue Van Stalker. The first part of this experience got lost when I switched phones, so I'll keep the background brief. Basically, a community volunteer program my cousin and I joined in 2018 required us to conduct public interviews each season about local issues to improve our communication skills and gather diverse perspectives from residents. My cousin and I partnered with 2 program coordinators and canvassed the neighborhood. Our final location was a Target, where we interviewed various shoppers. The most memorable encounter was our second-to-last interview with an older gentleman who became unusually interested in our personal details after completing our questionnaire. Being 14 at the time with limited awareness of potential dangers, we freely shared information about ourselves. Several days later, a social media account named Rick_Morrison appeared in our friend suggestions. This profile began obsessively engaging with our old content, leaving numerous flame and heart emojis while making inappropriate comments calling us attractive. The situation escalated when explicit images started arriving in our messages. My cousin and I immediately blocked the account. Within days, the profile vanished completely from the platform. It wouldn't appear in any searches. We assumed that was the end of our troubles. We were mistaken. When school resumed in September, we had nearly forgotten the incident entirely. However, both of our Instagram accounts received new follow requests from someone called Rick Morrison, clearly the same individual. We blocked this account immediately, but not before discovering disturbing comments on my childhood photos, specifically mentioning my curly red hair and commenting inappropriately about my appearance in family vacation pictures. Following these events, we informed our parents about the harassment. Beyond making our profiles private, there seemed to be limited recourse available. Local authorities suggested deleting our social media entirely, but as teenagers, we naturally resisted this advice. For the next several years, continuing until late 2021, this person persistently created new accounts with slight variations of the same name to send friend requests. While somewhat predictable, the pattern was concerning. However, at the start of 2022, the harassment took a much more sinister turn. Accounts began appearing that perfectly mimicked our actual friends' profiles, using their names, photos, and mutual connections. Naturally, we accepted these requests, believing they were legitimate contacts. We quickly realized our error when our posts immediately received engagement from these fake accounts, accompanied by a flood of explicit messages. We blocked these accounts repeatedly. This became an exhausting cycle. Legitimate-looking profiles using stolen information from our genuine friends would be created, just to circumvent our blocking efforts. Eventually, we stopped accepting any new friend requests from school acquaintances, even those we knew personally. The patent's final occurrence happened during summer 2022. The wave of fake accounts had ceased approximately 2 months earlier, and when what appeared to be a legitimate request from a classmate arrived, I decided to take the risk. My cousin remained cautious, but I chose to proceed. Our agreement was to completely delete our social media and start fresh if this account proved problematic. I admit I was a naive 18-year-old, but please don't judge too harshly. However, this account behaved differently. No spam comments, no explicit messages, just normal social media interaction. Occasional likes on new posts, story reactions, never commenting directly. We finally thought our ordeal had ended. We were wrong again. Strange coincidences began occurring with increasing frequency and obvious intentionality. I would post photos of friends and me at the beach, and within minutes a blue van would appear in the parking area, positioned uncomfortably close to my vehicle, driver's side, though we initially tried to dismiss it as coincidence. There were still other parking spaces available. My cousin and I were on the boardwalk with a clear view of the lot. The van's headlights remained on, directed toward our location, for an extended period. When we became genuinely uncomfortable and anxious, we left the boardwalk and began walking along the beach instead. The vehicle was too close to mine for us to risk approaching it safely. This occurred around 11 p.m. with no other visitors present. We waited and walked the beach for nearly an hour before the van finally departed. Only then did we rush to my car and drive home, frequently checking my mirrors for followers. This happened in early July, and the pattern continued. I didn't initially recognize it as a pattern, thinking each incident was isolated. It never occurred to me that these appearances correlated with my social media posts about locations. I began noticing blue vans at virtually every location I posted about, including one that would wait outside my college when I shared stories about walking to my part-time job at a nearby cafe. Still young and naive, I didn't assume malicious intent. I thought it might be parents waiting for students, and many people in our area drive various blue vehicles, so I never worried too much about seeing them regularly. My cousin never mentioned encountering any blue vans, and when we were together, we rarely noticed them. But I grew increasingly nervous after one afternoon when I was walking to work and decided to look at the driver of the van that regularly parked near the student pickup area. It was the same man from our Target interview in 2018, perhaps slightly older. The recognition was shocking. We never expected to encounter him again, especially since we had met him in a different city entirely. Yet there he was, unmistakably. I immediately walked, practically ran, to my workplace. This pattern continued, and I finally understood I was being stalked after that first clear sighting, because I began seeing him everywhere on foot as well. This post is getting lengthy, so I'll jump ahead to the final incident that occurred on the last day of our volunteer program in late August 2023. At this point, I was still 18, and being older than most new participants, I essentially functioned as an assistant leader. I drove younger volunteers to and from the program daily, and they contributed gas money, so the arrangement worked well for everyone. It didn't bother me since they lived in my area, while others from more distant locations were typically transported by the coordinators. On this particular day, I posted all our final campfire photos immediately before leaving to try resolving my phone's technical issues. It was experiencing glitches, data problems, and couldn't make calls due to storage being completely full. I uploaded numerous photos hoping to free up space, but the problem persists. My phone was essentially non-functional. It barely worked, and I purchased my current device after this incident. Additionally, one of the older participants visiting for the final day, 20-year-old male, also lacked a working phone. In my back seat were 3 volunteers, 1 without a phone, and 2 with dead batteries. 1 was charging their device using my car charger, but we didn't think much of it. We simply turned up the radio and headed home. As I pulled from the rural road leading from our program site to the main intersection, the light turned green, and we proceeded forward. In the adjacent lane was a blue van that kept flashing its high beams. This seemed odd, so I accelerated, but didn't think much of it initially. Side note, my best friend, whom I'll call Beth, has a toddler. Beth became a mother at 17, so at this point her child was nearly 2 years old, still difficult during car rides. This becomes relevant shortly because both attended the final day of our program too. She left just before us when her child became fussy. Eventually, I no longer saw the blue van behind me and reduced my speed somewhat. It was nearly 10 p.m. by then, late enough for the highway between our towns to be essentially deserted. There's a winding back road that leads near my house and directly through an upscale neighborhood. These are the streets I typically use returning home from the program when I have no passengers to drop off, and everyone who regularly rode with me called it the scenic route. It was quite beautiful, lined with mature oak trees and local wildlife. The volunteers in the back, not really children. They acted like it, 14-year-old female and a 16-year-old male. The 16-year-old male was begging me to take the scenic route since it was our final day. So I relented and activated my turn signal, turning left onto the back road. Now listen, I'm not the most cautious person. Don't judge me too harshly. I'm basically still a teenager myself. But all the passengers in the back loved hanging out the windows on the back road. So I allowed them to stick their heads through the sunroof and sit on the window frames while holding the roof rails. I drove slowly, under 15 miles per hour, just so they could enjoy themselves without risk of injury. The back roads were completely empty. Police never patrolled these streets, and I was driving well under the speed limit, so there was minimal risk in letting them hang out the windows. Eventually, I let them convince me to drive through the upscale neighborhoods that featured elaborate water features and decorative archways over their streets. Apparently, one of the archways had collapsed, so we had to detour through an extremely narrow street adjacent to a deep storm drainage canal at least 20 to 25 feet deep. As we navigated around it, a vehicle appeared behind us. I assumed it belonged to a neighborhood resident, so I planned to accelerate and let them reach their home. Finally, we reached the four-way intersection within the upscale area. Straight ahead was a dead end, which was my original destination. To the left was the collapsed archway, and to the right was a back loop that would return us to the neighborhood entrance, but with no houses or streetlights, because that section was still under construction. But Marcus, the 16-year-old, told me to turn right. Keep in mind, one of the volunteers was protruding from my sunroof in the back seat, so I couldn't see through my rearview mirror. I didn't really want to, but I trusted his judgment and turned right. Immediately after turning, I heard honking behind us. I was startled, as were the passengers in back. I glanced at my side mirrors but could only see brilliant LED headlights. I thought perhaps I had taken too long to turn, so I accelerated after completing the right turn. There was a sharp curve at the bottom of a hill on this back street that requires aggressive steering to stay on the road, especially in darkness. The vehicle behind us also turned right. They began flashing their LED high beams, honking loudly, and had lowered their windows to shout at us. They kept attempting to pull alongside us and ram my car to force us off the road. That's when I realized this was serious. I immediately began shouting at the passengers in the back to sit down, buckle their seatbelts, and close their windows. They barely managed to comply before I hit the curve at the hill's bottom aggressively and accelerated off the street, driving around the drainage canal without difficulty. I had navigated it multiple times before. There was no functioning phone in the car to contact anyone, especially not police, so I simply sped through the back streets as the vehicle pursued us, repeatedly attempting to force us off the road. When we approached sharp corners, they decelerated. This indicated they were unfamiliar with the area, which used to my advantage. As I approached a stop sign where I could turn left or right, my house was to the right, so left it was. I yelled at Marcus to check right because I wasn't stopping at the sign. I sped past it. The vehicle, this is when I clearly identified it as a blue van, tried to strike my rear bumper again, and I swerved, nearly hitting someone's fence. I raced down the street, taking every turn as quickly as possible until I thought I had lost the van. I sped past my college and back onto the highway where we had originally exited. I didn't see the van behind us, and we were all still shaken. I turned right onto another main road and stopped at an open gas station and gave the passengers in the back some cash to buy drinks and snacks to help them calm down. None of them were crying, thankfully. They were adrenaline enthusiasts who found it more thrilling than terrifying. I asked Marcus to supervise them in the store and ensure they didn't do anything foolish while I filled my gas tank. We waited at the gas station for about 25 minutes before returning to the road to drive them home, just to be safe. I then asked Marcus if he had seen that van before. He said that he thought it was the same van that had been parked at the program site, which meant it had followed us for more than 30 minutes. After dropping everyone off, I was still shaking and decided to see if my phone could contact someone to discuss what had happened. The only contact that would load was Beth, since she was the last person I had communicated with. Fortunately, my phone actually connected the call. She answered, but all I could hear was her crying. Obviously panicking, I asked what was wrong, and incredibly, she shared an eerily similar story to what had just happened to me. Apparently, Beth's toddler began crying so loudly she could barely concentrate on driving. So she pulled into the closed convenience store I mentioned earlier, right outside my college that I had sped past. She was giving her child a bottle when a blue van entered the lot. She immediately became wary because the store was closed and her instincts were correct. Less than 30 seconds later, this van parked horizontally in front of Beth's car to block her exit. She immediately restarted her engine, locked her doors, and drove over the grass median separating her from the street. She wasn't taking any chances with her baby's safety. Beth told me the only thing she remembered clearly was the man we had encountered years ago at that Target, his eyes staring at her like she was merely an object for his possession. As she raced home, the van caught up to her. She turned onto her back road running low on fuel, and the van began flashing its lights, honking, trying to run her off the road the entire time. But a few streets before hers, a small red sedan pulled out in front of her and began brake, checking her while the blue van attempted to strike her from behind. It was chaos. She took a chance, accelerated, and swung onto her street to at least lose the red car. The van pursued her. Apparently, both of her older brothers were outside waiting for her with some of their friends to help carry baby supplies inside. Upon seeing this as she pulled into her driveway, the blue van sped away. If her brothers hadn't been outside, the outcome could have been very different. But anyway, to summarize, the van that pursued me had an accomplice in a red sedan that followed my friend Beth. When they couldn't catch me, they targeted her. Both Marcus and I suspected that because I didn't turn toward the dead end where the man could have trapped me, that's probably why the situation escalated so violently so quickly. If you want more of my story experiences that sound somewhat unbelievable, but are unfortunately true, let me know in the comments. Edit. I never mentioned what happened afterward. The man in the blue van and his accomplice in the small red sedan were apprehended in a neighboring town when security footage captured them attempting to abduct an 8-year-old from a front porch, only to be attacked by the family's dog. Additionally, we discovered there had been multiple sightings of a blue van in our area following other people in similar incidents during the days after our experience, targeting vehicles matching description similar to my friends and my cars. Our reports were officially filed after we saw the information about the vehicle on social media, along with the identity of the man who had stalked us for years. It took years to eliminate this threat, but we no longer have to worry about these individuals. Thank you for listening to today's story of the Blue Van Stalker. If you could, please leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it, as it helps the channel grow. Thanks again, and stay safe.